Hey guys, what's up? PipSnipers here, back for another update. Let's take a look at XRP over here on, we'll actually do a top-down analysis. We'll take a look at the weekly time frame and we'll go all the way down to the 4-hour. So this is the weekly time frame on XRP. And as you guys can see, we've had no weekly closure below the 200-day moving average. We wicked below it on the week of April 7th. You see how we wicked below it? And this is what I like to call the suicide wick, because in the thick of it, when the body is down over here, you have a lot of people panicking, a lot of market participants on edge, right? Because we're below the 200-day. But then if you just wait for that weekly candle to play out, you guys can see that we retracted back into the range and then closed over 50% above the previous week's price action, right? You see how we close up here, more than 50% of the way of the previous week, right? And then the week after that, we printed a doji. The week after that was which was last week, was a push up to the highs. And now this week has to play out. So what I'm looking for here on XRP, so I do think that the bottom is in on XRP at this low over here at $1.64. Okay, I think that's the low, and this was our deviation below the range. Okay, now what we can also do is place a trend line like this on the daily time frame. You see this trend line over here? This would be considered our trend line liquidity. So you can see how many times the price is rejected off of this trend line. You have a lot of traders placing their stops above the trend line. So there's lots of liquidity above that level, meaning it's at some point likely to be taken out. And our draw on liquidity would be the 70.2 to 78.6% fib measured from January 16th, which would be the peak, down to the trough here on April 7th. So we'd be taking a look at these levels right here. Okay. And we'd want to take a look at this on the logarithmic scale. And we would be looking at $2.72 and $2.89. Okay, that would be our draw on liquidity. Now, I do think that if we do get a daily closure back above this trend line over here, I would say that that is sufficient enough to consider this move over here as a valid deviation and that the low is in. But to solidify that bias, we would just want to see a move above these two levels right here. So getting above this trend line here, I would consider that sufficient enough to say that the low is in. However, in order to solidify that bias, we would just need to get a push above these two levels right here at the 702 and the 786. Remember, you have a lot of traders placing their stops above this trend line, thinking it's going to have continuation down. I doubt that's going to happen, considering the way the price action is played out, right? You had this move below the range, and then on the weekly time frame you wick below the 200 and then close back above it, and now we're making our way back to the trend line. So that's that's good news. It looks like bulls are still in control. But something I wanted to point out on the 4-hour time frame that I mentioned in my previous stream is that we haven't been able to get above the 123.6 to 138.2% extension. So when we take a fib from this swing high over here on April 13th down to this low on April 16th, we can see that we weren't able to get above the 1.236, 1.382. Okay. Right here. You can actually take a look at it on this chart right here. I can show you. So you see, it's a little bit more clean. You see how we haven't gotten above that 1.382? So now that 1.382 extension sits right there at $2.33. So there is a possibility that this is an A wave where you have a 3-wave move down. This is your B wave where you have a 3-wave move up, and then you would have a 5-wave move down below $2.03 to retest this 200-day moving average and even retest this range as support, right? And establish that as solid support before we have reversion back to the original trend. There is a possibility of that. So if we do end up breaking down in the days to come for the rest of the week, don't be alarmed because it's likely just a wave 2. And these would be all of the DCA levels just in case we did break down and we aren't able to get above $2.33. Okay, these would be all of your fib levels here. Okay, so we'd be targeting the 38.2% fib at $2.04. But I do think that if we were to have that C wave down, we would come down to around $1.95, so 1.954. To retap the 200-day moving average and retap this reaccumulation range as support, okay? Now, there's no guarantee that will come down for that C wave. I mean, all we would need to see on the 4-hour is just a push above $2.33. Let me just make sure this is accurate. Yeah, so $2.3326 is what we would want to see a 4-hour close above, so we can invalidate the possibility that this is a B wave before we come down for a C wave toward any of those fibs I was showing you before we have continuation up. Now, you can kind of consider this like a inverted head and shoulders pattern, but we're going to take a look at this idea on a little bit more of a cleaner chart, right? This is your left shoulder right here, right? That's your left shoulder. This is your head, and then this is your right shoulder. This over here is your neckline. Now, what I've seen in the market is when we get above the neckline of an inverted head and shoulders pattern, you have market participants going max long over here just for price to come down to take out all of those stops, to flush out all of the over leveraged longs in the market before having reversion back to the original trend. I've seen that in the market before. So that's something to be aware of with inverted head and shoulders patterns, is that when you get the break above the neckline, it's likely that it's a fake out, right? Not a guarantee. I'm just saying it's likely that if we're unable to get above these highs at $2.33, that we would just come down to reset the price, flush out all of the over leverage before we can have a healthy move to the upside. Now, let's go back to this chart that I made over here, and we'll take a closer look at what exactly XRP is doing. Right now, what I would recommend in the market is whenever you have price ranging sideways or going up and down constantly, your first instinct is to place a pattern on the chart or a diagonal trend line. I would recommend not to do that, but instead place horizontal trend lines on the chart like this, right? So this is the top of your range, right? This is your mid range right here, and then this is the bottom of your range right here, right? Now, when you see a sweep below the bottom half of the range and then a retraction back into the range, right? That will tell you that this was just manipulation. So what you have over here is just accumulation, right? Then you have manipulation with this deviation below the bottom of the range. And this is where all of the retail traders go max short. They sell their entire bag, right? Because they think, oh, the trend is broken, the range is broken, we've gone below the 200-day, it's over. But no, this was our manipulation, and we can consider that manipulation because we retracted back into the range and we've had multiple daily candle closures back above it. Okay, so you have your accumulation, your manipulation, and then your distribution, or in other words, expansion. So now I do think that we are within the expansion phase to the upside, and I do think that this move over here was our bottom on XRP. But like I said, let's not rule out the possibility of a C wave to the downside. Just a small C wave for a wave 2, right? Where this is your A, your B, and then your C before we continue up from there. Now, remember what I said, in order to invalidate that, we would need to get a 4-hour push above $2.33. And as you guys can see, this was just simply a wave 4, right? We have two things over here. We have time and price-based capitulation. From the peak to the trough, we've gone down about 51 to 52%. So that's your price-based capitulation. And then we also have our time-based capitulation right over here, 147 days. Okay, so everything is telling us that this was wave 4 reaccumulation, and we're going to go in for that wave 5, likely to around $14. I do think that'll be the peak. Now we can do three things to find the wave 5 targets. Now, when I was a beginner in crypto, I wish I had someone on YouTube to show me all of these things, right? To show me all the targets, to show me exactly what's going on. So I'm here today to give you guys knowledge so you can sell at the correct target and not end up being a bag holder. Okay? So what I would recommend now for all of the people holding XRP is to continue to hold. Don't sell your XRP, because we have some pretty optimistic targets here. I'm pretty optimistic on it. Now, like I said, we can do two things to find these wave 5 targets. We can take a fib from this high over here, right here, down to this low, and take a look at the fibs on the linear scale. And then what you're going to do is take a trend-based fib to find your wave 5. So we take a trend-based fib from this low over here up to the top of our trend and down to the counter trend, or in other words, down to the bottom of our wave 4. And then you would get all of the trend-based fib targets. Then what you can also do is just take a regular fib from the 2018 high down to the 2020 low and just see if the targets line up, and you just want to place boxes around them, right? So I do think that we will wick to $14 and have a 1-to-1 extension of the 5th wave, but I stress the importance of taking profits all the way up, because we don't know where this will exactly top out at. But I would say that realistic, I would say the best place to take profit would be here at this TP1 to TP2 level. So this TP1 level is sitting at around $6 to $6.32. Okay. So as we approach 6, you'd want to look to scale out, and then from $7.40 to around $8, maybe $8.40. That's where you'd want to take another big chunk out, not financial advice. And then you'd want to save some of your coins, or you can save a little bit of a moon bag for the TP3, which would be 8.89, 11, and then 14. Remember what I said. I do think XRP hits 14. However, I want you guys to take profit all the way up, so you're not left holding the bag just in case we don't reach there. Now, we do have another little resistance zone sitting at 450 to 482. Now, if we get up there and we end up finding some resistance there, you can take some partials, you can take some off the table. but I would say the majority of your bag you'd want to be looking at this TP1 and then TP2 target. Okay, so yeah, this is XRP, and you know, even if we go all the way back to 2014, we can see that how good this market structure looks. Like, this was your wave 1, right, from May 2014 up to January 2015. This was your wave 2 going down to January 2017 before we have a very explosive wave 3 to the upside right over here. And then for over 2,800 days, we were in this pennant for a massive wave 4. Okay. Now within the pennant, you're going to have an ABC within each of the waves. Yeah, so you see over 2,300 days, almost 2,400 days of a bear market, pretty much just going sideways within a pennant. And you would consider this a triangle pattern because the waves subdivide into 3. So you have your ABC down in your A, ABC up in your B, ABC down in your C, A, B, C up in your D, ABC down in your E, and then we have your finally your impulsive move to the upside. So it does look like we're within wave 5 of 5. Now, I know there's a lot of influencers out there saying that XRP can hit 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks, all of these crazy high numbers, and I don't disagree with them. I do think XRP can hit those levels one day. However, no matter how we place these fibs, we can see that it's gonna start losing steam at 13 to 14 buck. Like, even if you take a fib from the 2017 high down to the 2020 low, we can see here that the 4.236 is at 13 bucks. 3.618 is at 11, right? As we approach those levels, it's going to get very exhausted. Like, when in a bull market, when there's no one left, when everyone's a buyer, that's when you need to watch out, right? When there's still, when people are just buying, right? That's when you need to watch out, because that's when we usually have reversals. But yeah, no matter how we place these fibs, we can see that the max top target would be around that 13 to 14 buck area. But remember, take profit all the way up. That's the best advice I can give. Okay, so yeah, this is XRP. Never went below the 200-day moving average on the weekly time frame. Wyckoff reaccumulation for 147 days on the consolidating on the 2021 highs, above all of the daily EMAs. Okay, as you guys can see, we're above all of the daily EMAs. Okay, and we have price-based capitulation as well, in conjunction with time-based capitulation, going down over 51%. And we have this range reclaim here after having this suicide wick on April 7th. Okay, so no need to panic here on XRP. I think we're ready for the next leg in the market, but just stay patient, because it may not be a straight line up yet. It may need to consolidate a bit, as long as we stay below $2.33 on the 4-hour. Okay, let's not rule out the possibility of this C wave down to any of these fibs before we see the reversal. Okay, these fibs right here. All right. However, if we get above $2.33, then that's great as well. Then that would tell us that we're already within our wave 3 to the upside, right? This would be your wave 1. This is your wave 2, and we're already within our wave 3. However, as long as we stay below this $2.33 level, this would be your wave 1. This ABC would be your wave 2. And then we go up for your wave 3 of 5 of 5. Okay? So I hope you guys enjoyed the video today. Super bullish on XRP. I'm not bearish on XRP at all. I think that we're going in for a very nice run for the rest of 2025. And we have some exciting times ahead. If you want to stay updated with XRP every day, along with all of your favorite assets, we have over 350 assets in the Discord. Just click the link in the description below to join, and you'll get access to the Discord. It's an amazing community, right? You can ask me any question you want, and you can also connect with me one-on-one. Hope you guys enjoyed the video today. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Peace out and take it easy. See you in the next one.